Hey folks, Glenn May here with BassResource.com, and today I want to talk to you about the tube bait. This is a really versatile bait. You can rig it so many different ways and it's effective in all of them. So I want to go through some of the different ways that you can fish them. I've caught largemouth and smallmouth on this in all across the country. So let me show you a couple different ways to rig this. The first one is using a tube jig. This is an internal jig that goes inside the weight. I want to show you a couple different ones here. Look at this, there's two different kinds. What I want you to notice here is this one here, the eye is at the top of the bait, or top of the weight, the top of the jig. The eye here is at an angle on this one over here. There's two different reasons for that. Now this one here, with the eye on the top, it's going to give that tube the characteristic spiral action that it's known for. Okay, it looks like a dying bait fish, and I'm telling you, man, the fish love that. Bass just chew it up. And that eye on the top, that's critical. That's what gives it that action. Okay. The bad thing about that, of course, is because it spirals, well, it likes to get hung up in weeds, gets hung up on things under the docks, and also just because of that position of the eye, for me, it tends to get hung up in rocks more often. I end up breaking off a lot. That's where this one comes in with the angle. That's where that comes into play. Okay, can you see that angle a little bit? It gives it less of a pronounced spiral action, but because of that angle, it comes through weeds a lot easier, and it doesn't get hung up on rocks as much. So this is the one I prefer to use more often than not. The way you rig it's really simple. And then you're just going to stick it inside the back side of the tube, slide it all the way up inside, and you can see a little bulge there, and you just poke it right on through. Poke that eye right through the bait, if it will go through. There, just like so. I don't know how well you can see that. Can you see that? There you go. So that's the eye right there. And you just tie right to it. Okay? Very simple, straightforward. However, if you notice, the hook is sticking out. And that makes it, you get better hookups that way, of course. But, you know, that kind of limits it such that you can't throw it in weedy areas. You're going to get hung up more. You're going to get hung up in ropes and things hanging off of docks and that sort of stuff. Well, they make that kind now. It's got that weed guard. Can you see that weed guard? All that does is it's a wire that hooks up underneath the barb of the hook. And you'd be surprised how weedless that is. I'm bringing my finger right across that weed, or that point, and it's not getting hung up, okay? This works great in really weedy areas and flipping and pitching and such. But it can be a little awkward to rig if you don't know how to do it. So all you do is you unhook the wire and you stick it right straight down. Let me wet that hook, wet the jig head real quick. This goes right inside the tube. Put the wire right inside the tube. Slide everything right on up. You see the wire will start to come right out. It'll poke right out. See how I did that? And just push it all the rest of the way on through, just like I showed you before, just like that other jig head. Poke that right on through, there's the eye. And now you can just snap that underneath that barb, and it's weedless now. Okay, you got a weedless jig. This works great for throwing into cover, throwing into weeds, anything you can get hung up on. Perfect way to catch fish and not worry about getting hung up. Let me show you a couple different ways. Another way. For example, you can throw it on a split shot rig, or mojo as some people call it. And it's got the cylinder weight here. This goes through weeds and rocks really well. And about 18 inches below that, down here, you can see how far apart it is. Down here I've got a little hook. Now this is an interesting looking hook. Notice the shape of this thing. Okay. Look at this part right here. See how that angles down like that? Looking at that, you can tell you right away that you're not going to put this in the bait the way you normally would. And why you have that? See this wire? This little wire, it comes undone, but it hooks on right to the hook, just like that. Can you see that? That's what holds the bait in place. Okay, but because of that angle, what you're going to do, you know, the bait lies just like that. So you can see the angle of that hook is really weird. You're going to want to put the hook in towards the top at an angle like this, rather than right down the middle like you would a Texas rig. So don't put it down there, you're going to put it at this angle. And all you're going to do is right straight through like that. Bring it all the way on through. This is called a high performance hook. I think Eagle Claw makes it. But then you slide it right on up and see that wire hook, that little wire we got right there? That clips back on to the hook like so, and now holds that bait in place. All you got to do now is put the hook through the body, and the point of the hook rests right on top of the bait, and it's weedless, just like that. That works perfect for a split shot rig. Okay, and I'm using 6-pound test, 6 to 10-pound test, medium light action rod, 7-foot rod, a little lightweight. Okay, but don't limit yourself to that. You can throw this behind a Carolina rig the exact same way. Okay, and what that does is this weight comes down, sits on the bottom, and then this bait just flutters on down, floats behind it, maybe floats a little bit above it. You can take like a number 10 corky, people use for salmon fishing, stuff that inside the bait, now it floats. It'll float above the weight here. Man, it's candy. It is candy. Sitting up there like that. Here's a little trick we use in the Northwest. Take a toothpick, break it off, and stick it right on the end so it holds the opening open. Blow all the water out before you cast it and throw it on this Mojo rig. Throw it out there. What happens is the bait will hit the bottom, it'll sit there for a minute, and this bait will sit on the top, floating. The tension, that bubble tension, will rise up, and eventually it'll give, and it'll burp a little bit and fall. What's happening is that smallmouth or largemouth will come right up and is looking right at that bait. Looking. I don't know if I want to bite it, and then he starts to back off, and then it burps and falls. It's candy. It is candy. Man, the fish love that. So you can do that, or like I said, put a little corky in there, a little number 10 corky, and that'll just make it a floating bait. Put it behind a Carolina rig, what have you, same sort of concept. Another way to rig it is using a drop shot rig. I'm just going to pull this bait out real quick from how I had it. And all I do here is I just nose hook it. So here I'm going to go straight from the top on down, just right on top of the bait. Straight all the way through. And that's it. I'm done. Okay? And that, my friends, is how I rig it on a drop shot rig. Okay? It floats freely behind here. It's uninhibited by the hook. Works wonders. I like to, I put a good amount of weight behind it here. Again, you don't have to limit yourself. I'm using 6-pound test, 6 to 10-pound test, 7-foot medium light action rod, but you can also use braided line on a flipping stick on a heavy weight on the bottom and turn that drop shot. I call it a Bubba shot, but you can now, because the weight's on the bottom, it's really easy to pitch. So I'll pitch that into some heavy cover, matted weeds, matted hydrilla, punch it through. It'll fall through, and now the bait's on the bottom, and the weight is on the bottom, and the bait is sitting up above that. Man, the fish underneath those mats eat that stuff up. Another hook, very similar to that HP hook I showed you, is like this one. Now, if you notice, instead of having a wire to hold that hook in place, it uses little plastic prongs there. But the concept is the same. See, the bait's going to sit flush with this hook point right here. Look at this angle. Okay, you got to go through the top, not through the middle, through the top. But when you do that, here I've got it on braided line. Here's bait. I've put a bullet sinker in front of it, little tungsten weight, and I flip and pitch this into wooded, brush, cover, all kinds of stuff, and it's weedless. I just text pose it. What I do is I just put back the plastic back on top of the point there, but it's completely weedless. I can run my finger here, I'm not getting hooked up at all. So you don't catch any weeds or any garbage, any gunk. And those little prongs hold the bait right in place. This is a perfect little setup for flipping and pitching. I mean, there are so many different ways you can fish a tube, it's not even funny. There's internal weights you can use. Again, with those little clips or those angles, you put the weight inside, the hook goes through it, there's a little opening in there and holds the weight inside the bait. And another way to throw it is with darter heads. And that's very similar to these, very similar, except that the head is pointed. I don't have those. But the head's pointed instead of a ball. And then the tube itself, instead of putting it inside, threading inside the bait, you rig it like you would a Texas rig, on the outside, like this, okay? And then what you're doing, whoops, sorry. What you're gonna do is, with the weight on the outside, it does a couple things. First off, if I can do this, now the jig head's on the outside with the eye tie up here, with it further in front of the bait. And that's going to give it an even more pronounced spiral action. It's really going to spin as it falls. This is another great way to rig it. I don't like it as much because it slides off the hook a lot easier. And I just find it burns up through my baits a lot faster because I'm tearing them up as they're sliding off this hook. But it's a great, easy way to fish it. You know, don't be afraid to experiment. Look at all the stuff you've got in your boat and play around with it. The point here is that there's really no wrong way to fish this bait. There's a lot of different ways. Get creative, have fun with it, and catch a lot of fish. I hope those tips helped. For more tips and tricks like this, visit BassResource.com.